let's dive into this. To get to the bottom of this mystery, we first need to travel back in time, all the way to the Caribbean island of Hispaniola. Now, today this island is shared by Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and the landscape is just absolutely riddled with these dark, deep limestone sinkholes and cairns. In fact, in some areas, there's a different sinkhole like every 100 meters. And these caves, they're basically nature's time capsules. They preserve tens of thousands of fossils from rare animals that you can't find anywhere else on Earth. And look, if you think the modern housing crisis is tough, imagine having to rely on the regurgitated dinner of a completely different species just to build a nursery for your kids. But in the ancient world, one bird's vomit literally became another creature's absolute dream home.
To really set the scene here, and it's a pretty spooky, ancient scene, the researchers described it perfectly. Quote, "Deep in a limestone sinkhole on the Caribbean island of Hispaniola, a family of owls made their home for generations, hunting through the night and returning each dawn to cough up the bones of what they'd eaten." Unquote. Just picture that in your head. Thousands of years of owls hunting under the Caribbean moon and systematically just tossing their leftovers onto the cave floor.
So how did this natural mechanism actually work? Well, it's a literal step-by-step process. First, these owls hunted the local wildlife by night, mostly going after small things like rodents, little sloths, monkeys, and other birds. But, owls can't digest bone. So step 2, they compactly regurgitated those indigestible bones as pellets. And step 3, over hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, these pellets just landed on the cave floor, layering up and fossilizing into a perfectly preserved timeline of the cave's entire ecosystem. Forward a few millennia to the modern day. Honestly, no one really thought to look all that closely at these massive piles of owl pellets. I mean, would you? But then a paleontologist named Lazaro Viñola López from the Field Museum in Chicago stepped onto the scene. He's basically our scientific detective here. He was meticulously cleaning these tiny, incredibly fragile fossilized jawbones pulled right from these caves. Now, because rodent teeth have no roots, they naturally just fall out after the animal decays, and that leaves behind empty sockets. But when Lazaro zoomed in and looked incredibly close at these rootless sockets, he noticed a major anomaly. Hidden deep inside was this weird, deliberate-looking packing material. And just like that, the mystery deepened. Viñola López noted the strange texture immediately. Quote, "It was a smooth surface and almost concave. That's not how sediment normally fills in, and I kept seeing it in multiple specimens. I was like, okay, there's something weird here." Unquote. And this highlights a really stark contrast. There is a huge difference between random cave dirt that just happens to wash into a hole and something that has been carefully, deliberately packed in and smoothed down. This strange, concave texture actually triggered a memory for Viñola López. Years earlier, during an excavation way out in Montana, he remembered seeing fossilized wasp cocoons, which are basically these thin, dried mud chambers, which led him to this massive, mind-boggling question. Could an insect really have built a nest inside a fossil tooth socket and survived in the fossil record for 20,000 years? It's a fantastic cliffhanger of a hypothesis, right? See how this builds, because having a hunch is one thing, but proving it in paleontology, that is a whole different ballgame. The team faced a major hurdle here. How on earth do you look inside a microscopic 20,000-year-old fragile bone cavity without breaking it and completely destroying the evidence? The answer, of course, was advanced technology. The team used non-destructive CT scanning to peek inside the bone cavities. This let them build incredibly detailed 3D images of the microscopic structures, all without disturbing a single ancient grain of sediment. And wow, the scans were absolutely definitive. Hiding inside those tiny bones, they found perfectly formed mud nests, which were clearly built for offspring. To give you a sense of scale, each chamber was smaller than a pencil eraser. And most importantly, their unique shapes perfectly matched nests built by solitary bee species that are still living today. The mother bees had literally mixed cave dirt with their own saliva to build these tiny, intricate mud chambers. Brilliantly illustrates a completely fascinating biological behavior, because unlike the big, hive-building honeybees we usually think of, most bee species out there are actually solitary. That means a single, very tired mother bee has to build and provision a nest all by herself. In this pitch-black cave, she found the ultimate, ready-made real estate right inside the bones of dead mammals. What this team discovered, which was just published in the Royal Society Open Science, is a massive scientific milestone. This is the first known evidence, anywhere in the world, of bees using animal bone as a nesting site. No way, right? And to make it even more incredible, some of these tiny mud-filled cavities still contained actual grains of ancient pollen. It was a 20,000-year-old food supply that the mother bee painstakingly gathered and sealed inside for her larvae to eat after they hatched. To truly grasp the scale of this story, we really need to look at the timeline. So around 20,000 years ago, the very first owl pellets are deposited, and those first solitary bees find the bones and start building their nests. Then for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, generations of owls just keep living there, stacking layer upon layer of bone, which beautifully preserves the bee nests underneath. Then, about 4,500 years ago, several of those mammal species whose bones were used as nurseries actually go extinct. And finally, jumping to 2025 and 2026, this incredible hidden ecosystem is officially published and brought to light.
So the crucial point here is understanding the bigger picture. Why does this tiny, slightly gross real estate transaction actually matter so much to science? Well, it comes down to a fundamental rule of paleontology. Traditional fossils, things like bones and shells, they preserve what an animal was made of. They show us their anatomy. But trace fossils, which is exactly what these tiny mud nests are, preserve what an animal did. They are frozen, perfect moments of ancient behavior. They literally capture the daily struggles and the clever survival tactics of life 20,000 years ago. What this reveals is an amazing, entirely overlooked partnership spanning millennia. Just think about the environment for a second. There was very limited soil on that hard cave floor, but there was an absolute abundance of owl pellet bones. So the solitary bees solved their housing crisis by utilizing the leftovers. The crazy part? The owls, the prey animals, and the bees, they never actually met each other. Yet, layer by layer, for thousands of years, each one shaped an opportunity for the next one to survive.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. The next time you see something discarded, or maybe you're just looking at a plain, boring piece of bone in a museum, ask yourself, what completely overlooked stories of new life might be hiding in the leftovers of our own world? It's an inspiring reminder, honestly. Even a broken fossil, scattered in the dark by a hunting owl 20,000 years ago, can still hold a beautiful, intricate story of new life.